It's December, and when I talk about math, I usually look for math that's related to something that has an actual presence around me. And right now, that's the Secret Santa game. It's a game of chance, and I decided to take a closer look at the odds associated with it and found out that there is a strategy that you can use. So in my slightly satirical cover page, which I'm calling The Secret Santa Game, How to Play and Win, I'm going to have to put a disclaimer. This is for amusement only, just like the sports betting slips I used to find lying around the office. So the Secret Santa game is when every student in the class draws the name of another student and will secretly buy a gift for that person. It's a popular and widespread game that's been around for a while. I played it 40 years ago, 3,000 miles away, in a private school. We called it Kris Kringles. My kids have recently played it here at their public school. So let's talk about strategies that'll help you get assigned to a good gift giver. And I'm not talking about anything like trying to make the slip of paper with your name on it larger or smaller. In my experience, a teacher will make sure that those are all the same size. I'm talking about odds that naturally occur from the way the game is played. So how can there be a strategy when the kids draw names at random? Well, there can't be a strategy when all the names are assigned randomly. If the teacher is assigning the names either by randomizing them electronically on a website or arbitrarily matching up kids, there is no strategy. As in casino gambling, electronics have removed many of the gamblers' edges from games that used to be purely mechanical. But what I want to talk about is a non-obvious edge that occurs when kids are drawing names from a hat. So you might ask, aren't names drawn from a hat as random as can be? And that is true. If everyone comes to the hat in whatever order, selects and removes a name at random, you will in fact assign one of the n factorial permutations at random. You'll have a perfectly random permutation where anyone has an equally likely chance to select any other player, including, unfortunately, oneself. The procedure fails if someone draws their own name. Nobody's allowed to buy a gift for themselves in a Secret Santa game, and that is where the edge comes from. Mathematically speaking, what we're hoping to do is draw a permutation with no fixed points. Mathematicians call that a derangement. Like many terms in math, I find it a bit funny. If everyone's in their assigned spot, it's perfectly arranged. If nobody's in their assigned spot, it's completely deranged. Run for your lives. So the big problem is that the game is likely to fail, and that's about 63% of the time it's failing. 1 over 1 minus e to be precise, fairly independent of the number of players. Starts out at 66 2/3% with 3 players and converges in very quickly to around 63% with just a few more players. This is the famous hat problem, first described in the early 1700s. So the procedure will usually produce the undesirable result of someone drawing their own name. In probability, we often use decision trees to analyze situations where successive choices are made. This problem can generate large and complicated decision trees, so I'll write some code to step through the tree. This code is in C++. I'm using the standard library containers to model the hat and keep track of who was picked in each round. I've got one main function called recursively for each draw from the hat, and when it notices an empty hat, it looks at the results, making a table to accumulate the results and report on how likely it is that any one player picked any other. When one writes code, one should try for code that is well commented, well structured, and correct. With a short program like this, I do believe those goals were achieved. So here are the results from an 8-player decision tree. We see that the game failed 63.2% of the time, which is bad. But from the table, we see that when the game did not fail, we have precisely the same number in each cell of the table, indicating that this game is completely and absolutely fair. Everyone has the same chance of choosing or being chosen by anyone else. A thing of beauty. Now, in order to achieve these beautifully fair results, if someone draws their own name, you should start over by having everyone return their names to the hat and start drawing again from the beginning. You must do this over and over until the procedure finishes without anyone drawing their own name. Because success happens only around 37% of the time, no matter how many kids are in the class, it could take 2, 3, 4 more tries before you get all the way through. This won't go over well if you try it. Kids have already gotten excited about who they drew from the hat, and now you're telling them that there is a do-over. This game is supposed to be fun. So what usually happens in practice when someone draws their own name is to have them put it back and draw again. Intuitively, it seems like this will result in a random derangement with no fixed points, but probability is a very bad place to use intuition. Turns out it's not quite random. Slight edges can be exploited. Probability is full of counterintuitive paradoxes. There's the ever-popular Monty Hall problem, the two-child problem, both very controversial and fraught with semantics. But this problem has no controversial semantics as far as I can tell. The procedure is completely spelled out with no human decision or interpretation to be made, and I think the paradox is therefore much more powerful. So let's model this in the C++ program and run the decision tree on 8 players who draw a name, check to make sure it's not their own, and then draw again if that was the case. Contrary to what you might expect, this game is pretty far from fair. We don't have equal numbers in each cell. They range all the way from 10.49% to 20.32%. Now, one thing we notice here is that the game can still fail, not with as high a percentage as it used to, but let's take a closer look at that. You could get to the final player to draw, and there's only one name left in the hat, and that's their own. It looks like there's a slightly less than 1/n chance of this. It's unlikely to fail in a classroom of 25, but not impossibly rare. Here's another thing to notice. If A drew first and had a 1/7 chance of drawing each of the others, how come the table entries in the first row are not all equal? This reflects the fact that if A picks H, the game will definitely not fail, and the probability for the A-H combination is in fact 1/7. If A did not pick H, then the game may fail, so the probability of H surviving to the final pick is slightly different depending on A's initial pick. So we still need to prevent this game from failing in the final round. What we're going to do, if there are 2 names left, and one of them is the last student who will draw, the teacher can force the next to last student to select the last student. Here's another observation. To make this game opaque, meaning the game itself doesn't give you any information about who has or hasn't chosen whom, the teacher might want to temporarily take a name out of the hat during each draw, no matter what, and return it after the draw. If the name of the student who is drawing is still in the hat, remove it. Otherwise, remove a random name. Except on the next to last round, where if the final name is still in the hat, take the other name out to prevent failure in the next and final round. Difficult job the teacher has now, but this makes the game opaque. Nobody will find out that their name hasn't been drawn yet, letting them rule out possibilities for who has chosen them. So let's update the C++ program to do this final act of failure prevention and run the numbers again with 8 students selecting in order A through H. Now that we've prevented failure, the first person to draw is equally likely to draw any of the other players, as you would expect, since the game won't fail, and failure was the only thing distorting the numbers in the first row of the table. So that's nice. It's fair for one person with respect to whom that person is drawing. Now look at this potentially exploitable edge here. For subsequent players, they are most likely to draw the person who drew just before them, except for the final 2. This is an edge if you can manipulate the order of the draw. Teacher, may I please go next? This is a slight and subtle edge, decreasing as class size increases, but it is real. So if there's a rich kid in the class who will give great presents, you want to make sure you draw just before that kid. Where does this edge come from? Well, you want to make sure your name is still in the hat when the rich kid draws, but you're in jeopardy of being drawn every round until then. If you're lucky enough to survive the round just before the rich kid draws, you'll get an extra edge by getting your own name out of jeopardy during the exact round when it would have been most likely to be drawn because of fewer names in the hat as the drawing progresses. Now the largest edge is with the final 2 players. They are each most likely to have drawn the other. In a casino, it would be incredible to be able to increase your odds from 1 in 7 to 1 in 4.92. This larger edge for G picking H is because in addition to preventing the game from failing at previous steps, there was an additional manipulation made to prevent the game from failing at the final step. This is really counterintuitive. We started with a procedure, drawing names from a hat, that was guaranteed to produce fair and equal results. It also happened to be prone to failure by assigning people to themselves. All we did was prevent failure and allow the game to continue. Turns out that failure was essential in weeding out games that were destined to fail. By allowing games that should have been discarded to proceed anyway, we've distorted the fair and equal results in a way that can potentially be manipulated. So what if you're a teacher? If you have a rich kid in the class, fairness dictates that you want everyone in the class to have an equal shot at getting the nice present. So you should let the rich kid pick first. On the other hand, maybe you're a redistributionist. Then you want to put your poorest kid next to last behind a rich kid who goes last. Think about how much wealth could be redistributed if every Secret Santa game in the world did that. Oh no. I thought by making math videos I would never have to talk about politics, and I'm getting really close to that minefield, so I'm going to end it right here. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. I know I did.